Hello and welcome to Cinema Savvy, and we are finally here with the Tenet review. Sorry if that was a slow reaction. It is 11:32 in the evening here in England, and I've been up since 5:40 this morning, surrounding my day around this, and that's why I'm leading into everyone. So tonight I'm joined by Chris, as usual, as we have done for all of our Christmas Nolan videos, and we have Tate with us as well. This is the keyword spoiler-free Tenet review. Spoiler-free. Everyone at home, please do not comment any spoilers at all. We will not be disclosing any information from this film. That's the main thing. We know this film hasn't been released in most countries. Certainly tonight, we were the first European country, I believe, to get it screened. So that's a big thing for us. This is going to be very short because, let's be honest, guys, there's not too much we can say. And thank you guys for waiting in the comments below who have been waiting late for us. This isn't the sort of normal hour and a half, 2-hour discussion that we've been doing recently.
No, there is one word that can open many doors, some good, some bad, and that is Tenet. And we're going to be discussing that one word today, and nothing to do with the film itself, just that one word.
Exactly. So beforehand, as usual, we'll do the social medias because we are going to be doing a spoiler review, which we think is going to be next Friday, the 3rd or 4th of September. Apologies what day that is. Best way to find out more details is, as usual, joining us on Facebook at Cinema Savvy, on Twitter at Cinema_Savvy, and the exact same on Instagram. And if you guys want to pick up a cinematic shot as being referenced by you two, I can't point. Everything's inverted today. You can get that on TeePublic, and there's a link in the description below. But yes, as usual, guys, as we're going to reiterate another time, spoiler-free thoughts. If you're not watching this live, don't be a dick. We will remove, obviously, any negative comments. Not negative, sorry, wrong word.
Inverted comments.
You can write backwards. Our Twitter feed is currently all backwards, but we will revert that back to normal at the weekend. So we're going to do things a bit stricter than we have done recently. Let's talk about the plot. Let's simplify it down to the basic core, right? Who's got IMDb open?
I have IMDb. Okay, so armed with only one word, Tenet, and fighting for the survival of the entire world, a protagonist journeys through a twilight world of international espionage on a mission that will unfold in something beyond real time. And usually IMDb likes to keep things simple, and that is honestly probably as simple as you can keep this plot. And if I'm going to jump in, Tate mentioned at the beginning that we are only going to say one word, Tenet. Hopefully we can muster more than one word, but I don't know how many more than that, because honestly, this film blew my mind in a much more substantial way than any other Nolan film has done. Even like the most complex Nolan films, give myself a pat on the back here, I've usually managed to understand and come out and form thoughts and have a concept of whether I like the film, whether I dislike the film. Let's be honest, it's Christopher Nolan. I pretty much like all of his movies. And this one I have no opinion on because I know that I don't understand it. I probably grasp 0.5% of this film at the moment. So I don't really know how much I can say on this. I guess biggest positive, the set pieces in this thing, especially like the inverted sequence. You've seen them in the trailers. There are more that you haven't seen in the trailer. There are fight sequences and corridors. There is a phenomenal car chase, both in regular and inverted, which you see in the trailer. Those are an absolute wonder to behold, and I can't wait to see the behind-the-scenes featurettes. I know that a few have been released on YouTube, but getting the Blu-ray of this thing, hopefully get to see how more of these were brought to life. That's definitely probably my biggest positive. As a spectacle, it's fantastic. A negative, and I'm not going to say the negative because I don't understand it. That's not a fair negative. I would say that the main protagonist lacks character. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more character depth, maybe to the main character. I always keep forgetting his name. My God, John David Washington. I think he's a fine actor. I love him in BlacKkKlansman. I think he's perfectly suitable for this. I think he fits the character well. I just thought he was a bit dull, and I think some of the supporting characters, and certainly Elizabeth Debicki and Kenneth Brenner, outshine anyone else in this film. Robert Pattinson as well, I thought was fantastic. It's just a shame for that main protagonist character. That's probably my biggest negative, I would say.
I'm going to jump in. Biggest positive for me is obviously director. This is possibly the most innovative film I may have ever witnessed in person. I got back 40 minutes ago. My dad's like, "How was it?" And I said, "I'm gonna need a notebook tomorrow." There are things here which it's the really boring PR line of Robert Pattinson said in the behind the scenes. No one's ever going to make this film again. No one can, and it's the usual sort of bollocks there. Everyone says stuff like that. And this is the first time I feel like I've been defeated by a film where I've come out. And let's be honest, I mean, Chris watched it together at the BFI IMAX tonight, which was absolutely bloody phenomenal. The only cinema in Europe showing it on film, IMAX, which was surreal. How many times did we turn to each other and say, I don't have a fucking clue what's going on?
And I thought it was just me. So I took comfort in that you also didn't know. And then when we came out and we messaged Tate, he also didn't understand it. So it's a triple whammy. It's a full house on the channel tonight. So at least I don't feel like the village idiot.
We were all in the same boat of not really knowing what the fuck just happened.
And that's how my brain's been. I'm puzzled out. I'm trying to. It's the best description I have is that it's a 1,000-piece puzzle. All the pieces are white, and we've just basically done the outside layer, which is the easiest bit to do. So I'm very much looking forward to trying to delve into that further. So that's that. In terms of a negative, I'm struggling to think one because I don't have a core grasp on the film. I'm struggling to know what I like and dislike because I don't understand what I liked and disliked.
I do have another one actually, and
just come up in the comments.
Yeah, I've got one as well, which I'll get to
so
as well.
Cole says, I need to see it again. I watched it in an IMAX and found some of the dialogue was drowned out. Absolutely. I had the same for Dunkirk, but as I've mentioned, when I saw it on a smaller screen, the audio was a lot better. So I am seeing this again on a smaller screen on Saturday. So I'm sure when we do our spoiler conversation next week, I'll be able to let you guys know the comparison. But I had exactly the same thing. Not only was the plot very complex for my small, tiny little mind to understand, but I also really struggled to hear the majority of the dialogue in this film. I don't know if that was the sound mixing. I don't know if that was particularly the sound where we saw it. But that was a problem for me. So that kind of added to my ability to not understand or not comprehend everything that was happening in front of me.
I was meant to say negative. I'm struggling to come up with one. I don't have many positives or negatives. I'm not in a mindset where I feel like I haven't watched this film properly. I'm seeing it again tomorrow night. I'm seeing it for a third time on Saturday. And I feel that there will be a notebook coming with me if I can get to a really quiet screening because I just need to study this. This is something that I just can't comprehend. I said this to you as soon as I walked out, as soon as we stood up, how one man can create this. I'm incapable of seeing how that mind works. That is, I don't think is right. I've never seen anything like this, and it's so hard to talk about it as well because I'm sitting here saying it's in interview, it's this, and I can't tell you why. Obviously, we know about inversion, which we can kind of get to, I guess, a little bit later, and that's been a core plot concept. And we knew nothing going into this, and I feel like I know nothing coming out. And I know it's a shared feeling, not just amongst us, but a couple of other people I've spoken to today. They all seem to have enjoyed it, but the exact same thing, like we need to keep seeing this. So I'm very looking forward to these extra screenings, and also when the book comes out on September the 4th, I need to get a highlighter out and start like marking pages.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in now. Positives. The action set pieces in this film are bonkers. Just balls to the wall bonkers. If you've seen the trailers, you would have seen kind of glimpses of some of these set pieces. But when you actually get into the film, you're watching it and you're going, how on earth did they film this? How on earth did they craft this together? Who came up with this idea? And how magical it is that they have this very unique concept that you can never really apply to any other film. You have time travel in other films, but not in this same way. It's completely different to any other sort of time travel anyone has ever seen in any sort of film before. And it's very, very rare nowadays in Hollywood that you'd have a completely unique concept. And we were talking about this beforehand because when you look at the plot of this film, it is basically an international espionage film with a sci-fi element thrown in. And the international espionage part of the film, there's only really one film I can compare it to because there isn't many espionage films out there. You've obviously got your Bonds and your Jason Bournes even of those kind of films. But this is more like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. It's a very calculated spy thriller in certain parts. And then it has this sci-fi element brought into it and the action comes with that. And it completely takes on something unique on its own. So I have to give massive credit to that because we've been watching films for so long now. And like last year or even the year before as well with the Infinity Saga and stuff like that. You have those big blockbuster films. Every film nowadays either is a sequel or a reboot or attached to a franchise or something like that, unless it's outside of or unless it's in Oscar season. So to have this type of film being brought out now, it's incredible. And I completely commend Christopher Nolan on coming up with these ideas and pushing cinema in that direction to be unique and to be individual. On the flip side, a big negative I have with this film, and I think it's more of a wider negative and less of one that I would experience myself, but I have a feeling that this film is going to alienate a lot of audiences because it's unique. Because it's confusing, because we didn't fully understand it on first watching. A lot of people don't have the income to go and see a film maybe twice. They maybe have enough time on their hands to go and see a film maybe once a month. And I have a feeling that people going to see this film, seeing as it is the first film that has come out in a very long time, people are going to be flooding to go and see this film. Maybe not people who usually see Christopher Nolan films, and they're not going to understand a single thing, and they're going to look at it negatively because of that. It doesn't take away from the fact that the film, I thought it was a fantastic film, but I still don't understand it. And I'm not sure whether I think it's fantastic because of what I've seen so far, and I'm not sure if I don't like it because I still don't understand it. And I think those alienated audiences are going to suffer, really, because they would have seen the film once, and then they're going to go, I don't know what that was. I'm just going to say that I don't like the film without delving any deeper, which you kind of need to do on this film. You need to see it at least twice, maybe even more times, to understand anything that's going on.
That's a good point. That's a fair point, I think.
I wanted to bring up Inception because I never saw that at the cinema, but I remember the hoo-ha 10 years ago, but everyone shouted it was too confusing.
No one knows what Inception is.
And that's what, when we did our review, Chris, that's the third highest grossing original film of the last decade.
800 mil or something, was it?
800 plus mil. Like the only other two were Frozen, Inside Out, which are Disney and Pixar. So, it would be interesting to see how it does because people are confused, but I think that gives people the intrigue to go. Now, obviously, I'm going to go loads, and there will be other people. Most people will watch this. Every other film's moved their release dates for this. Mulan's going on Disney Plus. New Mutants is not even getting press screenings. If you want to know how much faith's in that, so it's going to be out for a couple of months. Obviously, people in America. I think there was a news article I was reading before we went live that some guys booked a 3-hour flight from California to somewhere to Canada so he can watch this film. So it's going to be interesting, but the confusion is going to be interesting because I need to see it again. And I think with the three of us have certainly said that when it came to Inception, there was no issue. And I wouldn't say it's a smug thing. I never used to brag saying I understood Inception first time round. I know a lot of people that didn't, but now I'm in their shoes and it feels horrible. And
I was trying to rationalize that thought and was thinking that out of all the Nolan films, I would probably compare this one the most in terms of the style of concept to Inception. But how come I can understand Inception and how come I walked out of this? Just to be honest, I felt like I knew less about this movie when I'd already seen the film before I'd even seen the film. And I think that I was trying to rationalize it in the Inception, you have a sort of fish out of water character that doesn't know the world with Ariadne, Ellen Page's character, who is brought into this world. And there is so much exposition in that film constantly. Like the first 3/4 of that film are exposition, not completely, just overstated exposition. It's all necessary for the plot as you're following that character, and it grounds you in that world and you understand the rules as people do. With this one, I felt with the protagonist, you get like a very, very quick, maybe 5-minute explanation for it, and then you're just into the movie. And if you're struggling to follow it, there is no hand-holding with this movie, whereas you might get that with Inception. This is just, if you don't understand that concept from the beginning, you're in it. There's even a line, and I'm not going to give away the line or anything like that, but it's when he's kind of learning about it, where halfway through the explanation, the character just says, try not to think too much about it and just kind of feel it. And I feel like that was Christopher Nolan's way of going, try not to get too hung up on the idea and trying to get your head around it and just feel it and just enjoy the experience of seeing this inversion. And I don't know whether that was kind of like a meta thing he threw in there, but I think probably that's where the difference comes in, whereas maybe I can understand and grasp Inception more from a first viewing than I could with this one.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think these are going to be the big two comparisons. And I think aside from that, moving on from this, you mentioned Inception. Every cast member in that is sort of specific to the plot. They all have their own sort of plot line. we kind of laugh at Joseph Gordon-Levitt being the I forgot the word, begins with E. He just basically talks
Exposition,
the exposition king, like everything comes out of him. Tom Hardy's like the fun one. Leo's obviously the protagonist, not obviously in this case the protagonist, but he's Cobb a protagonist, I guess we can say. And obviously everyone's got about, as you mentioned, Ariadne coming in with you, whereas this one that combines a batch together. Ariadne and Cobb are one. I guess you could say Tom Hardy and Arthur are Neil, the great Neil, I guess we can say now, played by Rob Pattinson. If you haven't seen the Batman trailer yet, please do. And it feels like a very smaller cast. It's not an ensemble piece. I feel that there are four main characters. If we want to delve into them as a good segue, obviously you mentioned John David Washington, who we all love, Black Klansman. They did an interview on the Inception behind the scenes, which I believe they've released tonight. If you haven't watched it, there's a 10-minute behind the scenes. And one of the main things they spoke about is the fact that it's the physical capacity, what he could do, how athletic he was, and that was the core of his character. And I think when, Chris, you mentioned your issues with him, I think that's where it stems with me, is that because I've gone in with this mindset that he's more of a physical presence than the protagonist, which I'm still getting to grips with, like the Shivering Soldier. It will take its time, but it will get there. I very much enjoyed him. And it feels like, I think I said to you, like how you get a Harry Potter film, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, the original, certainly. You've got the lead character, the main, the word protagonist is going to change for now, isn't it?
The hero of the story.
Yeah, and let's be honest, they're never as interesting as the people they're with. They're never as interesting as the villains. They're never as interesting as their friends. And I feel that's a vibe that goes across, not obviously a couple of them, but that goes across Hollywood. And I think, as you'll say this, I'll take your words that you want more from Rob Pattinson. You want more from all the others, and you do get a very good amount of time with them. But they bring so much to their roles. I adore this cast, and when we spoke about again that Dunkirk review, the beauty of this is that these aren't all people that have been in Nolan films before. The only carryover is Kenneth Brenner, and he couldn't be any more different from the commander he is in Dunkirk. So I think that's a really nice thing. It's just, I love Inception, and we do laugh at the fact they all end up in Dark Knight Rises, but to get in a new cast, I think that takes some of the issues you have beforehand away. You don't see the same character appearing in multiple films. So I think cast-wise, that was a really big thing for segueing into that.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And I think, you have obvious people returning. We see him in the trailer. Michael Caine gets a very short role in this. It's always good to see Michael Caine. And the only other returning one, from my knowledge, is Kenneth Branagh. And we may as well talk about him before we move into the new ones. But Kenneth Branagh absolutely steals the show in this for me. Him and his wife in the film, played by Elizabeth Debicki. That partnership, that duo, was by far the most interesting stuff for me in the film. I thought the scenes together with them were chilling. Kenneth Branagh gets some really intense lines in this. Probably one of my favorite threatening monologues in a film I've seen in a long time. I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, like he's just a fascinating character, and really the plot as a whole, it is kind of like a world-ending kind of thing. It is a very simple idea, but I feel like with the material that he had to work with, I thought Kenneth Branagh was great. There's some beautifully written dialogue in there. He's a very threatening character. Kenneth Branagh's always been one of those actors for us that's filled us with joy, with like Gilderoy Lockhart and everything like that, or Hercule Poirot from The Murder on the Orient Express. But here, this is a completely different side to Kenneth Branagh that I have never seen before. Whether he's done roles like this in the past, I don't know, but this was a first for me. And Elizabeth Debicki, who I'd only really seen from Widows, which was a film I didn't really care for, but even in that film, I thought she was by far the standout in that film. She's up there at the top for this film for me. She goes through a whole range of emotions, and to me gets the most fulfilling character arc out of any of the characters in the film. There's a nice little moment that's bookended towards the end, which was really, really satisfying. Not going in depth into what it is. But just her physicality and everything. I mean, she's a very tall lady, for one, tall, slender, but I don't know. She had that kind of femme fatale quality to her, which is a trope that we've seen in a lot of Nolan's films, that really sort of strong or striking female character. And I feel like she served that role. So she was my favorite character in this alongside Kenneth Branagh. Kenneth
Branagh was, I think the big thing I kind of spotted is that he wasn't just a villain, he was terrifying. You don't get that very often. There are shouting things. We kept laughing because it felt like some of the Harvey Dent things.
It was really unpredictable as well, because he flip-flopped constantly throughout the film.
In a world where we just get boring Russian villains whose plan is to take over the world every year, we might even have one in Bond this year. He felt so different because he has a different end game. He has a different character arc. His goals, he's meticulous, and as you mentioned, he's unpredictable. And I think that's what separates him from some of the others. That when these characters are one-on-one with him, it feels like there is a threat to them, and I think that does up the stakes for when they do interact with him. Elizabeth Debicki was superb, very similar to the character in Widows. Sort of obviously the estranged wife, I guess you could say, was physically abused and stuff, and it's just phenomenal. Again, it could have been so easy to bring in one of the usual suspects from the other ones. Like Marion Cotillard did it 2 films in a row, but she's starting to make a stamp. Widows was great. She had small roles in Great Gatsby and Guardians of the Galaxy, and obviously the big one is that she's been cast as Princess Diana the last couple of weeks, which I'm definitely sure would have had something to do with probably seeing an early cut of this film. I think she's got a very big career ahead of her and very fulfilling in this film. I think she's one of the standouts, but to me, my favorite character was the Mighty Neil, played by Rob Pattinson, aka Vengeance, aka Batman, aka Twilight, all of it.
And I completely agree with you. Neil was the best character in this film. Just the wittiness that came with his character and everything like that. And I think I was saying this beforehand. People wouldn't have realized that he's actually British until watching this film. Like, I know a lot of people who think that Robert Pattinson is American or was American just from the Twilight films and stuff like that, and not realize that he was in Harry Potter, therefore he's probably English. Through that kind of, route taken. But honestly, in this film, he is fantastic. I don't want to say that I'm looking forward more to Batman now after watching this film and seeing him in it, but I kind of am. We've always known that he'd been okay for action and stunts and stuff like that in that sense. But his character really draws the film together, I think. He is a character who is a mystery box in himself. There are a lot of mystery boxes in this film. But I feel like his is the one that I was kind of most involved in when it came around to where the characters were going in the film. It's always good to not know a character's full backstory and stuff like that from the very start. But yeah, I won't reveal anything more other than that. But I really enjoyed his character. I enjoyed a lot of the characters in this film, actually. The only thing that I'd say let me down on the characters in itself was the fact that, as we stated before, the audio from the screening wasn't completely clear, so you weren't able to make out everything the characters said at all points during the film. I think that takes away from a lot of the acting performances here, because you can tell that what they're doing just from their physical body language, from what you think they're saying, that it is fantastic, but you can't fully commit to saying, yes, it's phenomenal in that sense.
I don't know who Christopher Nolan's sound mixer is, and I don't want to fire anyone, but he really needs to get a different sound mixer if that's the culprit behind it. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's the screening. I don't know if the audio's fine. I don't know, but the fact that a lot of us noticed it, and obviously Carl in the comments from earlier, then something's got to be done about that, because I like to hear dialogue in films. It makes me.
But we've all watched it in IMAX. It may be completely different when we watch it in a normal cinema screening. The volume could be dialed back down again, and we may actually be able to hear what's actually happening. You never know.
But in terms of some innovations, because I think we've been mostly positive on this. It's just that we don't really know where our heads are at the moment. But there are a lot of innovations with this, and just seeing this thing on IMAX as well, there are some absolutely astounding shots. Probably chief among them in terms of just spectacle, where my jaw almost hit the floor. There's beautiful landscape shots. I can't remember where it was filmed. It's probably stated in the film, but there's a scene where someone stood upon a terrace, a house on a cliff top, and you just get to just take in that beautiful scenery there. And also the action scenes as well. The scene, and there is so much more to this scene than just the trailer, but the clip that you get from the trailer, the crashing of the Boeing 747, astounding on IMAX. The biggest screen, and your eyes are just sort of tracing all over the screen. It's amazing. So if you can see it in IMAX, Definitely go and see it just for the picture. Maybe not so much for the audio.
I was going to say, does this make Christopher Nolan now a serial plane crasher? Like, does he join the club with Harrison Ford, or?
He said that imagine telling a child you could one day blow up a real life Boeing 747. I think most of his films might have been wild imaginations from a very young age, that he's on his quest to activate every single one of them.
What is the next thing that he could blow up? Like the ISS? Like how does he go bigger than like?
What is bigger than a Boeing 747? There'll be a mountain. He'll actually do a real what are they called when all the snow
sets
drops.
off a nuke.
I mean, Mission Impossible's blowing up bridges, so what's next? You know, there could be something.
Yeah.
Golden Gate Bridge, maybe they've had enough. Maybe he wants to cash in. But with the pace that he's had for this and Dunkirk, he's certainly got the funds to probably acquire that, actually, if he wanted to. But no, inversion is a big thing. We can't delve into it because A, we don't understand it, B, spoiler filled. The fact that some of these scenes were filmed, them fighting backwards and forwards, actors performing backwards and forwards, dialogue, obviously that was done in post, but the concept of dialogue being backwards and forwards, the inversion idea, although we know it's kind of time travel, the approach to it was something I didn't expect. I think I can say that.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I don't fully understand it, so I can't get on a high horse about it, but there are moments where I feel that it's starting to click in my head, and then something else happens, and you drop out because you're refocusing on what's happening in the present. I think if I can crack this film, I think this honestly could be one of the greatest things. There is an incredible scene, which we all know about. It involves a stopwatch. That's all we can say. That hits a certain time. That moment is where stuff was happening, which I've never seen in cinema, and I think that's a fair way to put this. You know, how we wanted to make this film. So many directors would have cheapened out and done other things, and most directors wouldn't be able to comprehend this. They'd just be recutting another film that's come out 3 years before into a 4-hour TV series. So there are things like that, but I think that the idea of inversion combined with the action set pieces to do something new that hadn't been done, I think separates it from almost anything I've ever seen before. And I think that's what's left this big impact is, you know, although I don't understand it, the scenes I do understand, the scenes I'm fully aware of. There's not, I can't sit here and say some of my favorite scenes of the year because pretty much nothing's come out this year, but they're going to live long in the memory. Even on his own CV, there are probably scenes in this which are up there with many of his other big set pieces.
Yeah, no, I agree, and the inversion was definitely a selling point for me, definitely. And I don't know how Nolan keeps doing this, but he honestly does, in that every time I go and see one of his films, I always get a sense of, I haven't seen that before, whether it's an approach to directing, whether it's a concept in terms of the plot or the structure or whatever happens to be. There's always something different there. And, you know, I'm trying to think back now, like, yes, I've seen time travel in films, but I've never seen it done like this with inversion. Like, I'm literally trying to think now, maybe another film has, or maybe someone can comment if they know another film with inversion in there. But again, it's that sort of like, it felt like it had like real science and real theories behind it as well. Again, I don't know all those theories. I don't know all that science, but there's, I can't go into it with the plot, but there's a sort of like the end goal of the villain. It feels like it's drawing on a lot of real ideas and theories and concepts in terms of time and what can affect time and how this can translate, and multiple parallel things. So many things are going on in this film, and you're right, this is all too much for one mind, but not for Christopher Nolan. He came up with it. This is a written and directed by Christopher Nolan. This isn't, you know, a collaboration or anything. This is all from that one mind. And I will love the moment where hopefully I can crack this movie. At the moment, I'm not too confident in my abilities. I'm not going to lie. It's going to definitely take more than just 2 viewings. We had a comment earlier, if I just bring it up. Lucas from earlier said a lot of people have said it's a film that needs a second viewing to fully understand it. I definitely think I'm going to need more than 2. There are moments in this film where, as George said, you're kind of focusing on the now, and then it moves to the next scene, but your mind is still kind of trying to understand that bit, and it's a snowball effect that gets you all the way through to the end, to the point where we got to the finale of the film, and they were giving briefings and telling you what was happening, and it was just all going over my head. So, but I mean, in terms of concept, it's fascinating. It really is. And the fact that, again, with Christopher Nolan, I've said this to like all of his movies, especially when it's his big budget ones, the approach to filming as much of it in camera as possible is to be commended, because it really blurred the line. I'm looking at stuff and thinking, well, that's clearly a visual effect, but I know when I get the Blu-ray, it probably was all done in camera. And it's going to be a very fascinating watch, the behind the scenes. I just really hope this is a movie that I can understand, because I really want to. I really do.
I think everyone does. Does anyone have anything to say about the music in the film before we move on to our final thoughts?
Obviously, it's his first film without Zimmer since The Prestige, which is worth mentioning. Ludwig Göransson's fine. That we can't listen to the soundtrack yet. It was great on some of the big scenes. It wasn't noticed as much on the smaller ones. The film doesn't have the emotion that some of Zimmer's best work has come from with Nolan. Certainly, looking back at Interstellar, the final few minutes, 5:28, 4:91 from Inception as well. Sorry, I meant 5 minutes, obviously time. I didn't get that emotional connect, but the characters aren't, as you mentioned, the prince, he doesn't have that level of emotion to him. But the set piece stuff I'm there for. I'm very excited to listen to it next week, and I want to keep an eye out because it was great. And obviously, we have also the Travis Scott theme song, which is very I quite enjoy it, but it is weaved into the soundtrack in a key scene. But there are sound effects in there which I think we all felt like when we were watching the film. Like scrat, whatever it was. Chris, you can say better than me.
Skirt, I think it was the exact lyric.
But it felt. I feel it suited the film. It didn't feel out of place. It didn't feel like, when you're watching Bond and Sam Smith starts singing and ruins it for you. When it popped up in the credits, I think it was appropriate to the film.
Yeah, it surprisingly fit it quite well in that same sense. I want to listen into the soundtrack because I was wondering, and I don't know whether this was actually done in the score or not. We'll have to see. But I was wondering, in some of the scenes where it was inverted, was the soundtrack played in reverse?
Probably. I'm just going to guess probably.
And that's why I want to check, because I couldn't pick up on it whilst watching the film, but I assumed that would be the case. But
for me, with the soundtrack, it felt like I was in a rave. Maybe that was the idea. It felt like I was in Clubland, circa 90s.
It's to help the film feel non-stop. No,
and to that effect, it did its job. It was, it was pounding. It was like, again, that was the sound system that we were seeing it on. It really never let up all the way through the movie. It did feel very Zimmer-esque. So I don't know whether sort of Christopher Nolan got Ludwig on board, and I'm sure he didn't. It doesn't sound like his MO, but just make it sound like that guy who came before. Because as George mentioned, like, he was doing Dune and he couldn't do the soundtrack for this one. But I think I couldn't quite pin it down when I was watching it. But George, I think you got it in that I do think Zimmer's absence is noticed with the score of this. And I think it is predominantly in those emotional moments, because Zimmer could definitely do both. And yeah, I know I've made jokes before where, like, the Zimmer sound now is kind of like a trope. You get it. There's a lot of copycats out there. I know there's a lot of proteges and everything, but a lot of action movies that come out now do kind of have that one uniform kind of sound to them that does mimic Hans Zimmer's score. But I think there are moments with, like, Elizabeth Debicki's character where I felt like the emotion could have been channeled more through the music, and I think maybe you would have got that with a Hans Zimmer. You don't get it so much in this, but it depends what the intention was. If the intention was to just have a pounding action, surreal, rave, assault on the senses kind of soundtrack, then I guess the job was done. But I don't know if it's a soundtrack that I'll listen to in isolation on its own. It felt like it served the action beats, but I think honestly it kind of sounded a bit like Skrillex in some points. Like, I think it would just give me a migraine if I tried to listen to on its own. I don't know. I'll have to listen to it when the soundtrack comes out, but the music was fine. It served the film, but it wasn't anything special. There's nothing hummable. There's just some sort of synth sounds which were kind of unique and added to the surreal quality of the movie.
Okay.
Definitely. So, moving on. Final thoughts. As we say, guys, this is spoiler free. So, thanks for everyone's been commenting along with this. We're gonna spoiler free final thought. I'm going to speak for three of us.
Is my final thought.
My final, I guess, current thoughts. Current thoughts probably better than final thought. I am very intrigued to see this again, so I can delve into this further, because there are things here which I'm piecing together as we speak. I've got Mind Heist on loop inside my head, and there needs to be a way to unlock it. So, from what I've seen, from what I've understood, this has been a tremendous experience. For a 4-month wait, give me something like this over some filth like New Mutants or some boring arty-farty film. This is what cinemas should be reopening for. This is the kind of thing you need to sit in your seat. You experience this at a cinema. You won't have that same satisfaction at home. You ain't going to get a Boeing 474, whatever it is, flying through your house, things like that. So, obviously, there is a pandemic going on. We can't hide from that. Obviously, it's not open in some countries, not yet, or even some cities next week. It won't be open either. So, if you can watch this, if you're comfortable going out to watch this and can, then I think you should give it a go. It's been very pleasant reading at how much money we had sold out. We were very lucky. Big cock up today for something, but we were able to get into a second screening at 4 p.m. Most cinemas are starting to sell out because obviously they've got limited capacity. So it's going to be a difficult one, I think, for the bigger places. So, if you can seek it out and if you can if someone can crack this first time, please comment below. I will happily promote you on our channel for eternity. This is like Chris Owens commenting, smirking to himself, which is a thought many far away. But yeah, my final thoughts is I can't give you a final thought because it's only a current thought. It's a thought in progress, and hopefully when we get to the spoiler-free review next week, I can delve into it a little bit more.
How about you, Tate?
My final thought is that this film, however clever it is, will probably alienate a lot of audiences. And all I can say to those audiences who may feel alienated by this film is you've either got to stick in there and give it another chance and give it another watch, because just for the action set pieces alone, I would happily give this another watch. And maybe to possibly understand what the fuck was going on, to give it another watch. But apart from that, it's a mixed one. Because I have a lot of positive points to the film. I do have a fair few negative to balance it out at this current stage. And I don't know which way the scale's going to tip when I watch it on second viewing. Maybe the things that I don't like will become a lot more kind of outlined, glaringly obvious, and the things which I did like in the first viewing, maybe I'll be even more confused after a second viewing. That might just be how this film goes. We don't know until we've done our second viewings. So until it gets around to the spoiler review, all I can say is...
Honestly, I feel like I'm a combination of... Hang on. There we go. Oh, I'm inverted. There we go. I'm a combination of your guys' reviews completely. I am dead set in the middle right now. Carl did just drop another comment. He said, only negative for me was some of the twists felt a little bit obvious, so they didn't really hit me. Overall, I will need multiple viewings. Absolutely. My brain it's been a very long day. An incredibly long day. As soon as we sign off this, I am hitting the hay and getting some shut eye. So this was a review I was kind of dreading, in that I've never had this before, where I've come out of a film and just have no opinion on it because I don't want to say it's bad because I don't understand it. That's not fair. But it's a very interesting point what Tate brought up, in that I kind of agree. I can see that alienating a lot of people, because I don't want to sort of, make us like we're on a high horse or something. We watch a lot of films, and I think we're sort of above intelligence when it comes to understanding films. Some you need multiple viewings for, definitely. But this one has stumped even us, and you got to think of, it sounds like such a snobby thing to say, but like average moviegoer, I do think are very dismissive of films like this. I think they'll watch them as like, oh, I don't understand it, it's boring, and they won't go back to it. So it won't get the multiple viewings that way. But then on the flip side, this is kind of the only film in cinemas at the moment. They are really pushing this film. So you kind of don't have a choice if you want to go to the cinema. You've got to go and see Tenet or some, I don't know, Trolls.
Or rewatch 1917 like I did last night.
But the really nice thing as well, and this is sort of like one thing that I think we should end on, Carl mentioned another positive. It was great to see the cinema packed again. You can tell everyone was transfixed on the screen. Absolutely. And there were some moments where spectacle was happening on the screen during this film, and you do kind of like, for the very scant few seconds, you glance around at the audience watching, and I was seeing some of those same reactions as well. And it is a really nice atmosphere to be back in a packed cinema, watching something new. It's not I love re-screenings, don't get me wrong, but it's always out of a sense of nostalgia to go and see stuff like that. It was nice you're all in the same boat. Opening day, you don't know what's going to happen, and you're watching it. So it was nice to be a film fan today, especially seeing it on the biggest screen. But yeah, I need multiple viewings. I'm going to echo everything you guys said. So take that for what it's worth. I don't know if that's a positive or a negative. It's in the middle. Go and see it if you can and experience it for yourself and come away with your own ideas about it and your own opinions on it. I think that's honestly the best way to go. But I'm going to pass over to George to do one last rattle through the socials.
Yes, so as you said, guys, this was completely spoiler-free, so do comment along, comment your thoughts. If there's anything you think we missed that didn't delve into the plot, just let us know, and we will obviously come back to them. And as usual, want to find more details when we're going live for our next couple of videos. It's still Christmas element. We've got a couple more things we're trying to get out. Best way to find out is, as usual, Facebook at Cinema Savvy, Twitter at Cinema_Savvy, and the same on Instagram, and link in the description for the public store. And as usual, sometimes when you know when things are going live, the best thing to do is to obviously subscribe, get the notifications on. You'll get a blip to your phone 30 minutes before we go live and when we do. So you do get a little bit of notice, as tonight was very, very last minute. Like I said, we've been out all day. So we hope some people are able to watch it live. Thank you for commenting along as usual. We've appreciated that. It's been a good month. We've been having so much fun getting through these reviews, and it's nice to top it off with something new, not talking about another old film, because we do love them. But, you know, now we have the joy of New Mutants coming out of the cinema, followed by Mulan for £20 at home, and Bill and Ted and everything else. So the world's changing again. August is almost done, but we're not done quite yet.
Absolutely. And the very last thing I'll say is comments for this video. We've had some great comments today. If you are going to comment post this video, please keep it spoiler free as per the title. Save all spoiler conversation. Review. Exactly, yeah, and we'll have our spoiler conversation there. So let's keep it spoiler free here. This was fun to do. We're all very tired. Our brains hurt from this movie and from the long day. So that'll do it for us, and we'll see you on the next video, guys. See ya.